Welcome back, everybody, to Brown Bag Bets, powered by BetSperts. We are your daily dose of quick hit handicapping and sports betting picks. Noops is on a plane to Vegas. He is going to be in Sin City for the second weekend of the tournament. Don't know if he's going to any of the games out there.
Must be nice.
He's on his way out there. And I just got an ominous message from Andy that said at 7 this morning saying, going to be in late, comma, I'm not able to do BBB. So I don't know. Hopefully everything's okay. Nevertheless, I'm producer Dan. That's Matt Rooney, inmates running the asylum today. And in an upset of all upsets, even though it is the spring, we are not actually going to talk college football today on the show. We do have a lot to talk about, but Matt, how are you doing? How is life? You were away this week. We were both away this weekend, back in our cold weather cities. How are you doing, bud?
I'm missing Palm Springs. I was about exactly a week ago now. I had just landed in LA and I was in a little bit warmer weather and getting ready for a golf trip in Palm Springs. Now I'm back in a Chicago apartment where it's raining and 40 degrees. At least it's not 20 and snowing. I guess there's that. And yeah, college football's coming. We're starting to see some spring ball clips. Phil and I our DM on Twitter has been back active of us just sending each other clips from Notre Dame spring practice. There was one that was Sam Hartman throwing like a 5-yard hitch to Tobias Merriweather, and both of us were like, "Oh man, look at that throw! What a great hitch throw!" It's good to be back. It's good to see the new guy, the new iterations of these teams actually on the field together. It's nice. It's just kind of the first, after recruiting, it's the first little crumb they give us of we're getting there, even though we're not really getting there. We're still very far away.
We are far away, but spring practice will be here. But like right now, it's all about March Madness. And I didn't even have time to throw this in. I've been so busy this morning. The NCAA hockey tournament kicks off tonight. The Quinnipiac Bobcats, go Bobcats. They play tomorrow night against Merrimack in Bridgeport. Unfortunately, the Bridgeport regional games tomorrow are at like 2 and 5. And getting to Bridgeport at 5 o'clock in the afternoon is a nightmare. So me and the lady will watch that game. Then we'll watch the Texas game against Xavier tomorrow night. So we'll have that. But
if Quinnipiac wins, would you be going to a next round game?
It depends on what happens with Texas. If Texas loses Xavier on Friday night, we might go down to Bridgeport. It's only about 45 minutes, so it's not super far away. May go down to the regional final there where they would play either Ohio State or Harvard. If Texas wins on Friday night, probably not. We'll probably just hang out and watch those games. But the NCAA tournament for basketball gets back underway this evening with our first set of Sweet 16 games. Neither Matt nor I are huge college basketball bettors. We just kind of, we bet for fun, but not, I wouldn't say like handicappers. Anyways, we have 4 games tonight. The early one, Michigan State, Kansas State, Sparty a 2-point favorite. Arkansas, UConn a 4-point favorite. Florida Atlantic, one of the Cinderella stories here. They are a 5-point dog to Rick Barnes in Tennessee. And then the best game on paper and probably going to be the best game on the court, Gonzaga, UCLA, a 1.5-point favorite. Is there any angle that you're playing? Did you have any futures still alive? Is there anything that you've bet that you're kind of sweating? Is there anything you're looking at tonight? Because I have one angle I'll get to in a second that I'm kind of interested in, but I wanted to get your thoughts first.
Well, I drew UCLA in the company pool. So I'm liking UCLA there with in the Sweet 16. Gonzaga's a good basketball team. They're not as good as they've been the last couple of years, but Drew Timme is still capable of dropping 30 on any given night. So that should be a really fun game to watch. And I feel like UCLA Gonzaga is a game we get in the Sweet 16 or the Elite 8 every other year, and it's almost always a 2 versus 3 seed, and we usually end up getting a very good one. I guess this was the Final Four, if I'm not mistaken, a couple years ago, the COVID year. But either way, these teams usually find a way to play instant classics in the tournament, so really looking forward to that one. In terms of a betting angle, man, like I know Michigan State got that win against Marquette, but Marquette played about as badly as they could. I felt like in that game, they couldn't really hit a big shot. They turned the ball over a ton, and Kansas State's playing some really good basketball. And I think that team's just kind of quietly gone about their business and done so really impressively. So if you're going to give me 2 points with Kansas State, I probably like them getting the 2. And I think you're going to talk a little bit about Arkansas, so I'll lean into this one with you. But I like Arkansas. Like, that Razorbacks team under Eric Musselman is just kind of becoming like the new March team that just always ends up going farther than they should. They beat Gonzaga last year. They gave Duke a run. I think they were like a 5 or 6 seed last year. Or maybe it was a 4, but they weren't as high as Duke or Gonzaga. They obviously beat Gonzaga, gave Duke a run a couple years before. They beat Kansas this year. I believe 2 years ago they made a little bit of a run as well. Like, Eric Musselman gets those guys playing their best basketball this time of year. So if you're going to give me 4 with that team, I think I'm going to take that as well.
Yeah, I forgot who I had in the company pool. I have Miami. At least they're still alive. And if they want to win tomorrow and beat Houston, that would be
Miami
great.
looks good.
If they want to beat Houston, that would be spectacular. I I have there's this thing that we were talking about on the show last week, and I got suckered into it. The Money Bag, which is on this like sketchy offshore book, which is like a fixed odds lottery. Like for the NCAA tournament, it was 48 to 1. You just put in your money and you hit select, and it randomizes a pick for you, and you can get anybody. Like I got Fairleigh Dickinson as one of my picks, but I also ended up with Tennessee. So like if they want to keep winning, that would be great. I have Jordan Spieth at 74 to 1 to win the Masters, which is
all right.
Yeah, so our buddy, been on the show a bunch, Chris Felica, he put out something the other day. And look, trends are not predictive. Like, don't just go blindly betting things that you see in trends. However, there's kind of this really like bizarre trend with teams that are seeded 8th or higher against, or 8th or lower against non-top 3 seeds in the Sweet 16. So basically, teams seeded 8 through 15 against teams seeded 4 through whatever, where in the last 7 instances, the lower seeded team has covered all 7 of them and won 6 of them outright. And the only loss was Wisconsin in 2017 to Florida when Chris Chiozza hit the 3-pointer.
Oh, I remember that was a great game
to win. So like we were a buzzer beater away from all 7 of them, 7 of the lower seeded teams winning. And I just like good coaches in March, like Izzo. For whatever reason, man, like not for whatever reason, Izzo's a great coach, and Michigan State always seems to be alive. I think that Musselman, like I'm riding the Muss bus here. I think Hurley's a good coach. I don't know if Hurley's a great coach. And so I just think they've got a chance here. This is going to be about which team can play the game they want to play. Arkansas plays a pretty quick tempo. UConn plays a pretty slow tempo. If it's a slow paced game, UConn's going to win because they're just a much more rounded team, really good defensively. They can kind of muck it up. But if Arkansas plays the way they want with a good coach, I kind of think they're very live to pull the upset there. Also, did you see the story about UConn's hotel?
No.
UConn, so the NCAA picks where they book the hotels, tell you where you're staying. UConn was staying at the Luxor, and apparently some of the rooms were in such bad shape after people had been partying in them all week. UConn moved hotels. So like Jeez. It's just like the trip got off to a bad start for UConn. Obviously, I think UConn probably wins this game, but like Arkansas was around like plus 150, 158, somewhere around there. To win outright. So I don't hate that look. Aaron Marshall in the chat says take the Owls and the points. For those of you uninitiated, that is Florida Atlantic. Again, that falls under the trend that Felica pointed out. So, you know, it's Rick Barnes in March. I don't want to always play it's just Rick Barnes in March card, but like you never know what's going to happen there. Tennessee might be a little too physical for them. I removed the wrong thing from the stream.
I got very nervous that you were gone there. Well, I'm
no, now. Just click the wrong button. So there we go. I mentioned the NCAA tournament for hockey. The pros are still playing, and you have a couple of bets. Oh, thanks for switching us.
I got you. I had fun being Dan for a few.
You don't want to be Dan. So we're gonna play a game. I'm gonna let you do your bets real quick, and then I'm going to bring up the NHL standings for the first time in like 2 months and see what surprises me. So you start us off. You've got a couple of bets for this evening.
I do. I didn't love the slate today, and as we kind of get, I've mentioned it a bunch, and it's the same thing with every sports betting league. But once you get towards the end of seasons, the odds just get kind of hard to find some value here. I'll start with Stars and Penguins. I'm going to take their first period under under 1.5 at plus 108. But Pittsburgh played last night. They played in Colorado, so not the shortest of travel. Obviously not like a 4-hour flight or anything cross country, but still had to travel last night into Dallas. I'm banking on a little bit of a slower start there against the Stars team that also likes to slow down the game a little bit and has one of the better goalies in the NHL, and Jake Ottinger. I have no issues seeing this one being a 1-0 or 0-0 game after the first period. If you're going to give me plus money at that, I really like it. There's really no value in first period overs anymore. Pretty much every one is priced around minus 120-ish, if not worse. So I'm going to take that first period under there. I just think there's a decent chance here that the Penguins want to play a slower start out of the gate after having a game last night in Colorado, and Dallas likes to play that anyways. And then my Blackhawks and the Capitals, we're gonna go over 6.5 at plus 100 there. Washington is allowing and scoring a good amount of goals as of late. They just lost 7-6 to Columbus. They lost 5-3 to Minnesota, 5-2 to St. Louis, won 5-4 against Buffalo, lost 5-3 against the Rangers. So each of their last 5, if you're counting there, have gone to 7 or more. Blackhawks have allowed 9 goals in their last 2 games, and outside of a 2-1 win at Nashville, 3 of their last 4 have gone over. Have gone to 6.5 or better. I really like the over in this one. Washington, like I said, allowing a ton of goals. The Blackhawks playing harder than they are. They're playing a lot better than they actually are, which is very frustrating for me. Good for building the culture, and I think it means they have a pretty good coach going for them going forwards. But really, in the whole "I want Connor Bedard" thing, not great. So maybe let's take our foot off the brakes or off the gas a little bit, pump the brakes a little bit there. But like the plus 100 value here at over 6.5 with 2 teams that can score a little bit, especially with Washington, and 2 teams that really struggle to keep the puck out of their own net.
Look, man, if we're being honest, you got the all-time win with the Texans winning their last game against the Colts.
I did.
So you're due a little bit of sports karma coming back against the Blackhawks there, if we're being honest.
But like, I think me getting the number 1 pick there is kind of sports karma for the best Bears quarterback of my lifetime being Jay Cutler, and it's not really close. And then after that, like literally name one. That was good. Rex Grossman might be the best one after that. So I think that's kind of my more sports karma. But you might also be right. Maybe I'm due for a downturn after getting number 1.
So circling back to looking at the NHL standings for the first time in a couple of months, and I could only see there's one thing that was a little surprising to me. Like I knew
pull those up, so I have them in front of me too.
I knew the Devils were having a good season, so I'm surprised they're that far ahead of the Rangers. But I knew they were having a good season. The Islanders and Penguins being wild card teams, like Florida being a point out of the playoffs. Florida and the Caps being out of the playoffs, I guess, is a little bit surprising, but like only so many spots there. In the Western Conference, just looking at it, the Kings in and the Flames out is the one thing that I look at being like, like I knew the Kraken were having a pretty solid season too.
Yeah.
So like nothing. Oh, Dallas being in first place was a little surprising to me, but it kind of feels like the Avalanche are just like treading water because they know that they can turn it on in the playoffs when they need to. So like they don't have to prove themselves anymore. They won 1 cup. They can get into the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean it's very similar to when the Blackhawks won those 3 cups in 6 years. Like I think they won the President's Trophy and were the 1 seed in the West 1 time. Once you kind of get to that point, which I know Colorado just won their first cup, but let's be like they've been the best team in the West for the last few years. Now that they've finally gotten over that hump, and they're dealing with a little bit of a Stanley Cup hangover. Obviously, the shorter off season. I think they kind of know like, hey, we need to get ourselves to the playoffs, and once we get ourselves to the playoffs, we'll be just fine. But it's more about getting there all in one piece and healthy and not rested, but fresh, as fresh as they can be. So winning the West for them is not all that important. They'd like to have a first round home series for sure, and they're only 2 points away from doing that. So I can definitely see them getting to that point. And yeah, Calgary's been a big disappointment. Johnny Gaudreau obviously left in free agency. Then they've make the big move to go get Jonathan Huberdeau. I don't know. Daryl Sutter's the guy there, and he's been, he had a good year with him last year, but he's a type of coach that, especially with this younger generation, I think is a guy that's a little bit prone to burnout, and probably a little bit faster than he did with the Kings. Obviously had a really good run there, but then eventually did. Like, I think that might be a case of what's going on there. I'm not really sure how he jives with, today's generation of professional hockey player, professional athlete for that matter. In the long term, but yeah, there's no doubt they've been a pretty big disappointment after how good they were last year. Johnny Gaudreau leaving should have hurt, but the addition of Jonathan Huberdeau to kind of ease that blow shouldn't have been that big of a deal. And then yeah, Florida also has been wildly disappointing. They've just gotten awful goaltending, and the Sergei Bobrovsky mega deal that was 7 years, $70 million or something like that. Like, he's been the definition, and you could kind of see it coming with him too. Like, once he signed the big deal, he was just going to kind of be whatever, but he's really just kind of like, he's not god awful, but like, you're paying a goalie $10 million a year for 7 years, you're expecting to be like Andrei Vasilevsky, and he's just been a very average goaltender throughout. So that's really, really hurt them through this process.
You're off the case, Bobrovsky. Look up just the Bobrovsky Sports Center Canada on YouTube. It's one of my favorite things ever. Cleaning something up real quick, Patrick said, I've heard Circus has one of the best steakhouses in Vegas. I always talk myself out of it, though. He's followed up. The one time I was at CC, everything was sticky. I just looked up their steakhouse. It is called The Steakhouse with THE in capital letters. So it's kind of got like this Ohio State vibe, I guess, calling it The Steakhouse. I'm out. I don't care if it's good. That. I'm out. So
I do want to throw up a comment here from noted St. Louis sports fan Patrick. Yeah, you did take Eric effing Johnson and passed on Jonathan effing Taves. So how'd that go for you, bud? Go Blue, go Hawks, right?
Hit him up, mrooney23 on Twitter if you want to talk some more shit about hockey with Matt. We're going to move on to soccer, Matt. We are in an international window, which means the Premier League, La Liga, all that. MLS just keeps playing. They don't care. They play on Saturday.
I will bet the overs, by the way. That's my official bet for our. No, I have to think about it because Noops and I didn't just blind bet overs last time. I have to think about it.
It's a little different with international soccer, and it's going to actually run counter to one of my bets. But we have Euro 24 qualifying beginning today. The tournament will be in Germany, so Germany automatically qualifies, but everyone else is in play. The United States and CONCACAF, they have the Nations League or whatever the hell they call it. So I have one bet for that, but we will start with today. We have, believe it or not, man, Italy and England drawn into the same group in Euro qualifying. Of course, this was the final at Euro 2021, which was played or Euro 2020, which was played in 2021.
So do we get the Euro in 2023 then?
2024.
So okay, I didn't, because I know it was officially supposed to be 2020, so I didn't know if they kept it or they bumped the next.
Just every 4 years, on the calendar. So 2024.
I thought it was every 3. For some reason, I thought Euro was every 3.
It's the 2 years between the.
So
World
it's like
Cup.
The Olympics switching off between winter and summer every 2 years.
Exactly. Got it. Summer Olympics and Euros coincide together, right? The next Olympics are Summer Olympics. Anyway, sure. So these two teams are drawn into a group together. They are in a group with Ukraine, North Macedonia, and Malta. Ukraine and North Macedonia both qualified for the Euros the last time, and Italy actually lost to North Macedonia in the World Cup playoffs, so there's some motivation there. Ukraine, they will be playing their home games as of now at a neutral site. Obviously, there's still a war going on there, so they're at a disadvantage. These two teams, even though Italy missed out on the World Cup, these are the two best teams in this group by far. The top two teams in each group will automatically qualify for the Euro. So there's wiggle room here, and I just don't think either team is going to be super motivated to go out and really push forward and try to just dominate the other one here. I think you're going to see a cautious game. We're in the middle of a long European season. We had a World Cup in the middle of it, although the Italian players didn't, but nevertheless, the English players did. England by nature under Gareth Southgate is pretty conservative. I just don't really think this is going to be an end-to-end kind of game. I think we're going to see these two teams trying to feel each other out, and I think both teams would be fine taking a draw here, but maybe we'll see some action late in this game, but I think we're going to see a little bit of a slow start. So I'm going to play a first half draw -110 here. If you want to play second half higher scoring, great. If you want to play if you want to get really froggy and do first half draw, second half Italy at plus 3 something, that's fine too. But I think we're going to see a little bit of a low scoring game there. And then the other game that I have on here, we have Portugal against Liechtenstein. Liechtenstein, Matt, is the literal worst team in Europe, at least per the seedings of this tournament. They were 0-6 in the Nations League, which set the group pots for this event. So they are the worst team, again, worst team potentially in this entire tournament. In 2022 World Cup qualifying, they allowed 34 goals and scored 2. They lost 9-0 to Germany. In 2020 Euro qualifying, they allowed 31 goals and scored 2. They lost 5-0 and 6-0 to Italy. 2018 World Cup qualifying, they allowed 39 goals and scored 1, lost 8-0 to Spain twice. And then at 2016 Euro qualifying, actually a little better. They only gave up 26 goals. They only scored 2, though. They lost 7-0 to Russia, 5-0 to Austria. This is a team that gives up a shit ton of goals to anybody respectable. So the bet here is Portugal, Liechtenstein, total goals, anything other than 2 through 6. So this basically what this is an over 6 bet or 1, but Portugal's not going to just score 1. So this is essentially an over 6 bet. This is under on DraftKings. You go to goals and you go down to scoring band and you can find this. This is at +115. Portugal is going to pour in goals. This is the first game for them under Roberto Martinez, and that might be the only fly in the ointment. He is legitimately one of the most wonderful human beings I've ever met and worked with in my life. Worked with him at ESPN a bit. He is a tremendous human being. He's a little bit underwhelming as a coach. Belgium always seemed to kind of underachieve with Portugal, or Belgium always seemed to underachieve with him as their coach, but Cristiano Ronaldo is going to be in there. Diego Jota, João Felix is in good form. They're just going to be really good, and they're going to score a lot of goals. So I'm banking on a 7-0, 8-0 kind of game. And then we got to bet on the U.S. here, Matt, and this is a narrative bet. This is I love a good narrative. You love a good narrative.
Who doesn't love a narrative?
And so basically, let me set a scene for you here. So the old coach, the no longer coach of the United States, his name is Greg Berhalter. He and his wife Rosalind have been together for over 30 years. And he was good friends with Claudio Reyna and Claudio Reyna's wife, Danielle. Claudio Reyna, one of the great players in U.S. soccer history. They have known each other since they were 17. They were friends forever and ever. Claudio Reyna's son, Gio, is one of the most talented young American soccer players on the planet, plays for Borussia Dortmund. He, however, was fairly unimpressive, at least in camp, with his attitude and his work ethic leading up to the World Cup, to the point where he almost got sent home, and they were very seriously considering not playing him at all. So how did Claudio Reyna and Danielle Reyna respond to that? They threatened to blackmail Greg Berhalter. Greg Berhalter got into a physical altercation with his wife 30 years ago where he kicked her. But he has been very transparent about it. They have worked through their issues. It is a non-issue for them now. They have worked through something that happened 30 years ago. Because of Gio Reyna's playing time, the Reyna family threatened to go and expose this story that happened 30 years ago and threatened to blackmail Greg Berhalter over Gio Reyna's playing time. So this is the just most very stereotypical sports parent story in the history of American soccer. So it's a very sordid affair. Greg Berhalter no longer the coach, not because of this. His contract was up. U.S. soccer is going to make some changes. Gio Reyna back with the U.S. national team for these games coming up. They play Grenada tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Eastern. So we're going to go with Gio Reyna anytime goal scorer, plus 165. He's back with the team. He'll be in the lineup at some point. We're going to go with him to score, plus 165. I can't bet against the narrative, Matt.
Who are we? Who's going to be our new coach?
They have an interim coach. One of the assistants is kind of the interim coach. They haven't really decided who's going to be the new coach. U.S. soccer tends to move very, very slowly with this stuff. So it'll probably be a bunch of months until they figure this out. There's kind of an interesting thing going on, though. There's a player named Folarin Balogun who is born in England, who is of African descent, but was born in the United States. So he can play for the U.S., he can play for England, and he can play for someone else. He's signed to Arsenal. They loaned him out to France, where he has been scoring 1 million goals for, I think he leads League One in France in scoring right now.
That's nice.
Hasn't committed to where he's going to play. He got called into some friendlies for the English youth team, withdrew with an injury, even though he's not hurt, and he's in Orlando visiting the U.S. national team. So it's like he's on a recruiting visit basically right now for the U.S.
That's kind of awesome.
But they don't have a coach. So, like, who knows what's going to happen there. So kind of a weird situation there. But the long story short, Jose Mourinho, who has coached a million.
That's the name I thought I heard.
He's like the rumored favorite, but nobody really knows. So that's it. But 3 soccer bets for you. And we're going to talk some baseball. You have a couple of futures here.
I do. I'm going to start there with the non-homer pick. With pick of one of my rivals. I'm going to take Jose Ramirez over a home run total at 28.5. Jose Ramirez is only 30 years old going into this year, not counting the COVID year because they only played 60 games. Every time he's played 130 games or more, he's gone over this total. He had 29 last year in 157 games, 36 in 2021 where he played 152. The year he had only 129 games in 2019, he still hit 23, so he was on pace to get over that number. And then 2018, 39 home runs and 157. 2017, 29 home runs and 152. So the last 5 times he's played that, he's been relatively healthy. He's gotten himself over that point, and I still think he's going to be the focal point of that Guardians lineup. Need to put a dollar in the jar there for saying that. I think he's going to have another good year, and they just got a little bit of help for him in that lineup too, with Josh Bell. That's going to provide a little bit of protection. If you got one thing to knock Cleveland for, it's probably the depth in that lineup, and I think they did a nice job adding Josh Bell for some protection for him there. But that is going to lead me to my my quote unquote homer pick. Even though talking to Dan about this before the show, he kind of agreed with me that there is some value here and it's not that much of a homer pick. Patrick just chimed in with the comments there too about Tony La Russa being gone and that being very helpful, worth 5 to 10 wins. And I kind of agree with him. The White Sox are now the 3rd favorites to win the AL Central at plus 300. And I still think if you look up and down the 3 the Tigers and the Royals, I'm just kind of counting out here. And if they prove me wrong, they prove me wrong. I'm really just looking at the Sox, the Twins, and the Guardians. And if you look at those three rosters, the White Sox have the most talented roster. They do have the most talent up and down throughout the division. The key for them is to stay healthy. But I also think part of what was an issue for them was Tony La Russa being a little bit too lax, being a little bit too not really caring about the regular season and just assuming that they were going to make the playoffs, telling guys to take time off, not really pushing through stuff, literally was telling players not to run out ground balls last year. I think this team is a little bit rejuvenated. Jose Abreu's gone. Yes, that is a blow to the lineup, but Andrew Benintendi comes in to start and play left field there, and that is going to take their outfield from being one of the worst in baseball defensively with Luis Robert being surrounded by Andrew Vaughn and Eloy Jimenez to now being one of the best with, a Gold Glove caliber center fielder and a Gold Glove caliber left fielder. Oscar Colas is likely to be their starting right fielder, and he's had a pretty nice defensive spring training. He's got a nice arm out there. So I think where they lost some help offensively, I think they gained a lot of it defensively. And if you watched any White Sox baseball last year, the offense, the bats weren't usually the problem. It was the inability to play defense and really do the fundamentals and the little things right. And from what I've been reading, hearing, spring training this year with Pedro Grifol is a night and day difference. Like, it's going to sound bad, but like, they're actually doing things. Like, they're actually working on, ground balls. They're working on defensive situations. They're working on, the little things, defensive drills, not just, hey, let's go take some batting practice and you guys are going to be fine, like Tony La Russa kind of did. So I think you're going to see a team here. It's a lot more focused, a lot more defensively sound, and doing the fundamentals and the little things right. And I think if they do that, this White Sox team was 81-81 last year when everything possible pretty much went wrong for them. And I don't see that happening again this year. I think just like Patrick said there, the manager change is going to be good for, 5 to 10, possibly 10 wins. And I think at plus 300 here, the third worst odds, you look around, Cleveland added Josh Bell. That's a nice addition, but they didn't really do a whole lot much. And I don't think that lineup is all that good. And you look at Minnesota, I have no idea why Minnesota is plus 180 there. They added Pablo Lopez to their rotation, but they also lost Luis Ariz, who's the he was the AL batting champion last year. Yes, they brought back Carlos Correa, but they had him last year and they stunk last year. And if you look at Minnesota's the 20 numbers from last year, 2022, Minnesota starters had the second least amount of quality starts throughout baseball, with just 35 in 162 games. That's not very good. And I know starters aren't going as long as they used to, but still, that's not a very good number. And I don't think they did enough to address that rotation. I don't think the pitching is deep enough. So if you're going to give me the Sox at 3-1, the third longest odds there, I'm going to take that easily. I think there's just too much value to pass up there. So not a homer pick. I think that's Dan, you can back me up. I think that's a value play right there at 3-1.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be a lot of variance in that division. So like taking the team has the third longest odds of the three like legit teams is fine with me. I don't think that's too much of a homer pick. You asked me to put these up, and and kind of was iffy on why. So, did you just want my opinion on the NL East?
Yeah, I just kind of because I've been doing baseball picks here. The Tuesdays I've been on trying to give some futures, and this division is always like. I know this is your division. Obviously, the Braves numbers have jumped to plus 100 now with the Mets' big injury to Edwin Diaz. They have been the favorite, but I think they got a little bit even shorter. They're close to at even money now. I kind of want to get your feel on the NL East here, because the Braves, I think, should be the favorite, but also I think the Braves, of the three teams that are probably going to compete for this division, did the least in the offseason, and kind of didn't really they locked up some of their own guys, but didn't really make many major additions. The Mets obviously got better. The Phillies got seemingly a lot better, but they still got some issues there. Do you see any value throughout this division? Is it the Braves? Is there value on the Braves at even money here? Is the Phillies to play at almost 3.5 to 1? I kind of want to get an NL East expert's take on how to attack the NL East this year, because I think this is the most fascinating division in baseball here, at least at the top with these three. This and maybe the AL East.
Funny enough, I would probably think the Mets would be the bet that I would like the most there. The Phillies, the thing with the Phillies is like, I kind of forgot, like Bryce Harper is going to be out half the season. And like 1 through 4, you're going to have Turner, Hoskins, Schwarber, Real Muto. So like 1 through 4, their lineup's awesome. After that, their lineup's not great. Their pitching's going to be pretty solid, but like, their lineup's kind of imbalanced, and I'm kind of hoping that maybe they get off to a slow start and you get some value on them later. The Braves, their starting rotation's pretty good. A little alarming. Raisel Iglesias, their closer, is going on the IL with low-grade shoulder inflammation. They announced that this morning.
That's never good.
But they can just put AJ Minter at closer and it'll be fine. Bullpens are volatile anyway, but like the Braves bullpen should be pretty decent. Ronald Acuna is healthy and he didn't hit well at the World Baseball Classic, but he looked like Ronald Acuna Jr. running the bases, playing the field, looked like himself again. Eddie Rosario can see. I don't know if a lot of people knew that last year if you don't follow the Braves, but Eddie Rosario literally had to have surgery to correct his vision last year because he couldn't see the ball. He had a couple of home runs the World Baseball Classic. Again, didn't hit for average, but hit for power, which was nice. They add Sean Murphy, so they're really good at catcher. They can alternate him and him and Darno, DHing to keep those guys fresh. The funny thing is, like, what's going to happen at shortstop with them? They let Dansby Swanson walk, and then they put out what I have likened to, like, North Korean state media videos about how Vaughn Grissom is putting in all this work at shortstop and he's the future. And now he might not even make the opening day roster. They might go with another rookie and Braden Shoemake at short. So who knows? Look, man, this division's going to be a slugfest. And the angle that I like the most here, and I might just end up go ahead and bet this. I don't love tying up minus 120 prices for lengthy periods of time, but on DraftKings, they have a division finishing position and you can pick any one for any team. The Marlins to finish fourth in the NL East is minus 120. And I just don't see very many scenarios where they don't finish fourth in this division. Like, I know some sharp bettors bet them to under their win total under the other day, but like they're not going to be under the Nationals. Like, look, the Nationals are 250 to 1 to win that division. And even if the Phillies might underachieve a little bit while Bryce Harper's out, I don't necessarily even think they will. So like minus 120 implies like 55% likelihood, and I think it's higher. I think it's like 60 to 65 or even like the scenarios in which they finish somewhere other than fourth in that division don't seem very likely to me. So that's kind of the angle. They're in the no man's land in this division, and that's kind of the angle I like the most, because you could convince me anybody's going to win that division, but you can't convince me that anybody is going to finish better than anyone is going to finish fourth other than the Marlins.
Yeah, like I think the only path out of there is the Phillies get further decimated with injury earlier, like, two of the four in the top four of their lineup there that you're mentioning, whether it's Schwarber, Turner, Realmuto, whoever, like, get hurt for significant periods of time, and the pitching kind of takes a big step back. Like, it wasn't great last year. Obviously, they put it together, and like you say, bullpens are volatile, and then I think the Phillies were living proof of that last year. Their bullpen was bad throughout the year and then got hot at the right time. Like, they would need regression to the mean there fully, but even then, when they get fully healthy, like, I'm not sure they'd fall that far behind the Marlins. I think I agree with you in terms of the best bet to win this division in terms of value is probably the Mets, because I mean, they are the Mets, and they very much have every chance in the world to Met themselves out of a division title like they did last year. But as good as Edwin Diaz is, he's the best closer in baseball. He's fantastic. He had an unbelievable year last year. He's a closer. You can find guys in bullpens, and like we just said, bullpens are very volatile. I'm not saying he's not valuable to their team. He very much is, but it's not like Pete Alonso's out for the year. It's not like Francisco Lindor's out for the year. It's not like they lost Scherzer or Verlander is going to be starting every fifth day for them. They lost a closer. You can go out and find a guy to throw, to be solid enough to throw an inning. And guess what? They have enough arsenal in their minor league system to go out and find a closer midway through the year if they really have to get a guy on an expiring contract who can maybe provide them a little bit more backup. I would not be terribly worried about the Mets, at least early on this year, in terms of their season being quote unquote over because their closers are. It's closer. They're going to be just fine. They're still a very good baseball team. So plus 170, that much differential from the Braves, I think I kind of like, but I think this is going to be a live betting scenario. It's going to be see if any one team jumps out. Do the Braves jump out to a 7-game lead early, and then maybe I can take the Mets at plus 300, or vice versa, like last year. The Mets got out to the 10-game lead early. The Braves draw. It's looking for value live, I think. But this is going to be a really fun division to watch throughout, and I'm glad I'm not a fan of any team in this division, so I can kind of just watch from afar.
The other thing, and this is the last point, we are going super long, and I want to talk NFL draft. And I have one other thing I want to bet real quick for baseball. The Braves have been awful in April the last 2 years, so I have no desire to bet them as the favorite right now until I see that they take April seriously, which they have not the last 2 years. Real quick before we move on to the NFL draft, these are things you can bet on Bovada, I just put these out there because I thought these were ridiculous. And granted, you can only put down about a grand total of like $150 combined on these 3 bets, and you might not want to tie up this much money until the summer. But my thought process is these are all very likely to happen. They're all plus money or even money, and you can just get a little bit of extra scratch to throw on the NFL or college football this year. They have under MLB specials on Bovada. You can do to make the All-Star game, yes, no. The yes prices for Juan Soto, even money, Ronald Acuna Jr. plus 115, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. plus 115. Acuna Jr., Guerrero both started last year. Acuna has made it every year he has started in the big leagues, and there has been an All-Star game, and Juan Soto was a reserve last year and is the National League MVP favorite. These prices seem hilariously terrible. So,
so this is just to make it. This isn't to
just
start.
To make the All-Star game, just to be in the All-Star game. So
there's a zero, like unless there's injury, like Vlad Guerrero Jr. is going to be the starting third baseman because it's the fan vote, right? And he's just like he's going to have the most votes. It's like LeBron.
Yeah. So, and Acuna's been a starter basically every year. Soto will be there. So, there you go. Juan Soto, Ronald Acuna Jr., Vladimir Guerrero Jr., all to make the All-Star game over at Bovada. Throw a few bucks on it. You're limited severely. They're not going to let you get a lot down, but that doesn't matter because you can pad your bankroll before we move on to the NFL, which we will talk about a little bit here, Matt. The NFL draft upcoming. I don't know if you know this or not, but the NFL draft is happening. FanDuel has some markets that have not been previously up until today, so we're going to talk about our 2 teams. These are positions of the first draft pick for particular NFL teams. So we will start with Matt's Chicago Bears, even though I guess technically now my team picks before yours does. But the position of Bears first drafted player, I only put some of them on here. O-line is the favorite, minus 105. D-line, plus 210. Cornerback, plus 400. Receiver, 800. Running back, 1900. Safety, 2600. This feels very much like a 2-position race. I guess my question is,
there's
Matt.
A third.
Huh?
I think there's a third position in here. I think. Well, go ahead with your question.
Well, my question was going to be: do you think that Jalen Carter, do you think Jalen Carter's in play at 9 if he's there? And I guess the bigger question is, what position is it? Cornerback?
Yes, okay. Jalen Carter, if he's there, will be in play. I have a hard time believing that many teams are going to pass on Jalen Carter, especially with a team like the Raiders sitting right there. If their quarterback's not there, that seems like a team that would absolutely take a gamble. No pun intended on the Vegas Raiders. They're taking Jalen Carter, but if he's there, I'd love to see the Bears grab him. I know his pro day performance was bad, but this is a 21-year-old kid who's going through an incredibly stressful time in his life, and probably, even if he has been working out every day, probably hasn't been the sole focus. I think he's going to be fine once he gets through all of the legal. Once all the legal issues are resolved, and assuming he's going to be on the field and all that next year, I think he'll end up being fine. So if he gets to 9, I think the Bears take him. I think there's a real chance they go with a corner at plus 400 there. Jalen Johnson's a very good cornerback, but he's not an elite cornerback in the NFL. And on the other side of him, they're playing an undrafted free agent last year, Jalen Jones. And they drafted Kyler Gordon in the second round last year. And Kyler Gordon had a slow start, but finished pretty strong to the season. But he's a slot corner. He's going to be your nickel corner for the most part. And with 2 really high-end names there, and Devin Witherspoon and Christian Gonzalez, I think there's a very decent chance they go ahead and take a corner at plus 400, especially if Paris Johnson were to go before number 9. If he's there at 9, I think that's probably the pick, and that's why you see it even money. But I would not be shocked at all to see them go corner at plus 400 there. I think there's an outside chance that if things fall a certain way, they'd take Jackson Smith-Njigba at 9, or if they were to trade back again, which I think is highly unlikely, and he were to fall, it's possible. But I think if you're looking for some value, I think cornerback is the play there. I think there's there's more options at corner for them to take than D-line. I think there's one D lineman that would legitimately fall to them that they would take, and I think that's Jalen Carter. I don't think Tyree Wilson's falling. Will Anderson's not falling to 9. I don't think they're reaching on a Lucas Van Ness at 9 because this draft is fairly deep with edge rushers. And I think when they get to the second round, they have those 2 picks now. If they really identify a guy early on, they can go trade up for an edge rusher they like. But I think there's too many options in there late. So I think corner is the value.
It's even got more value now because O-line is out to minus 140 on FanDuel, according to Patrick. I just looked it up. Cornerback is now 5 to 1. D-line plus 250. So you can get that there, and just flipping the slide over to my Atlanta Falcons.
Where are we going? Where are we going with the Falcons here, Dan?
Pick,
In the
draft, the Atlanta Falcons select cornerback is plus 150, D-line plus 170, O-line plus 600, receiver plus 1,000, and quarterback and running back are each 14-1. If you were to ask me which position, if we're doing like a picks pool and we had to lock it in today on March 23rd, I would say cornerback at plus 150 is the pick I would probably go with there. However, I would not bet it because I do think that if Tyree Wilson is there at 8, they will take Tyree Wilson, but I don't think they're going to take Jalen Carter. They just signed David Onyemata. They overpaid for him. They're paying Grady Jarrett a lot of money. I don't think they're going to draft a defensive tackle at 9. I love Devon Witherspoon's tape. I think that if he is there at 8, that is the guy that I would really like for them to take if he is available. As far as the Bears are concerned with cornerback, I have seen a lot of right now all mock drafts are just guesses. I've seen Raiders and Falcons going corner, which might throw a fly in the ointment.
If that's the case, Bears aren't going corner. I think that's what would ultimately keep them, is if those top two guys are off the board by 9.
So I think cornerback is the pick. Obviously D-line is very important as well, but of the other format, which one do you format of the other 4, Matt, which position do you think let me back up. Of those other 4 positions, which one do I think the Falcons would be most likely to pick at 8?
Well, I know you want them to go get Bijan.
I don't want them to go get Bijan necessarily. Well, okay. Fan part of my brain wants them to get Bijan.
There you go.
My actual brain says no. But they're not going to draft an offensive lineman. They have re-signed Caleb McGarry. They just gave Lindstrom a big extension. They're paying Jake Matthews a lot of money. They don't have a massive hole on their offensive line. Wide receiver, they do. They do need a wide receiver too, but there's nobody worth drafting at 8 unless they were to trade back. But this feels like a draft that's very devoid of talent at the top of the board for wide receiver, but you can get guys 2nd, 3rd, 4th round that are going to be good. And I really think they are bought in, at least in 2023, on Desmond Ridder. So I don't think they're going to draft a quarterback. Arthur Smith's offense was at its best in Tennessee when he had a healthy Derrick Henry. A bell cow running back is part of what that makes that offense tick. Tyler Algier had a really nice rookie year. If you look at it, he might have been better than Kenneth Walker was, just statistically speaking, this year. But like Bijan Robinson is a tempting pick. And you can say, well, they spent money on David Onyemata. They signed Caden Ellis from the Saints, who had 7 sacks last year. They've upgraded their pass rush a little bit. It's still not great. Caden Ellis is a big swing for a guy who hasn't played a ton, but 7 sacks would have led the team last year. They drafted Arnold Ebiketie in the 2nd round from Penn State last year as a pass rusher, so they might be comfortable there. They have enough players at cornerback to get by this year, but drafting a cornerback in the 1st round means you can sign AJ Terrell to a long-term extension and have another guy opposite him on a rookie deal, which is why I think that's the move. But if they're confident in the talent that they have at the cornerback position, they still have about $20 million in cap space to address that as well. I really, in my brain, can't shake the idea that Arthur Smith might just want that bell cow running back. We know that teams are winning Super Bowls with discount, cheap running back options. I know that. But on the flip side, if you look at running backs, at least the last several years, basically ever after Trent Richardson, running backs drafted highly have turned out to be pretty good players. The McCaffreys, the Sack Barkley, so on and so forth. Bijan Robinson's going to be a very good player. The Falcons can run the ball a lot. I think that opens up a lot on their offense. So I think there's a possibility. I think if they have their choice of cornerbacks, I think they take a cornerback. If they have one guy singled out as the guy at cornerback and he's gone, I wouldn't be shocked if they took Bijan Robinson. It would be surprising to a lot of other people. Positional importance in the NFL, it would be surprising, but I would not be surprised given what the identity of this team is if they were to make that decision. Is it a good decision? Probably
I don't think
not,
I don't think it's a bad decision. I don't think it's that out there to think about. Running backs don't go all that high anymore, but when it calls for them to, like you said, Christian McCaffrey, who went top 5, I think Saquon Barkley went 2 or 3 overall. When those guys come around, they do get taken, and usually they do hit. And it's more about just not giving those guys the second contract. It's about getting the most out of them on their first contracts. I don't think it's necessarily the best teams in the NFL don't have stud running backs. The best teams in the NFL might draft a stud running back. They just don't end up paying that stud running back when it comes time. But I think you're right. It's corner if they have their guy. I'd also be calling people in the mid to end of the 1st round and seeing what quarterback they want. And if certain quarterback's available and if they want my pick, come up and get it and grab some extra draft capital there, because I think the Falcons, everybody can use extra draft capital. And like you said, this first round's pretty deep. And if they've identified a receiver they like that they think is going to be there at maybe 16, 17, maybe you draw. I don't know who's picking at those certain picks. I just picked a number in the middle of the first round. Maybe you trade back a couple picks, maybe get your receiver and grab a couple extra picks in the process.
So before we wrap up, a couple of plugs that we want to make. The Detroit Lions quarterback was plus 1,100 when I first looked this morning. It is now plus 600. On last night's deep dive, they talked to Eric Eager from Sumer Sports, who said he would not be shocked if they move up to 3 and take Anthony Richardson. So go check that out wherever you can either get it on the podcast form on Apple or Spotify or on our YouTube channel. Check that out to hear his justification for why he thinks they might do that. And then if you want more NFL draft coverage from us here at BetSperts, tune into the 5th Year Option podcast with Andy and Vegas Refund, 2:00 today. I'm sure we will talk about all of those markets this afternoon when we get together for those guys. But that's going to do it for us. We have had a jumbo supersized 46-minute show, and I am exhausted and I want some lunch. So I'm going to go eat lunch. We appreciate you all for tuning in. For Matt, I'm Dan, and Andy and Noops will be back tomorrow. And I'm sure Matt might be here to do some hockey for a 3-man weave on Friday. They will talk to you guys then. Have a good day.